How does a company with a nearly 90% market share, a mountain of cash, and the world's most advanced factories suddenly find itself losing to a rival that was on the verge of bankruptcy just 5 years earlier? This is the paradox of the modern semiconductor industry. For decades, Intel was the undisputed king of silicon, a name so dominant it became synonymous with the personal computer itself. But while the world was looking at Intel spreadsheets, a quiet desperation was brewing at AMD. We are witnessing one of the most improbable turnarounds in business history. It is a story of how massive scale became a cage, and how a desperate gamble on a radical new architecture changed the way every computer on Earth functions today. This wasn't just a competition for faster speeds, it was a battle for the very soul of the digital age. Welcome to the era of the CPU wars, where the underdog didn't just catch up, they rewrote the rules of the game.
To understand the fall, you have to understand the height of the empire. In the early 2000s, Intel was untouchable. Through their tick-tock manufacturing model, they delivered a double whammy to the market every 2 years. A tick meant a smaller, more efficient manufacturing process, and a tock meant a brand new, more powerful architecture. It was a relentless drumbeat that crushed everyone in its path. Intel's marketing budget was so massive that the Intel Inside chime became the most recognized sound in tech. Meanwhile, AMD was struggling. They were plagued by poor management decisions and a series of technical failures, most notably the bulldozer architecture, which was a complete disaster. By the year 2015, AMD's stock price had plummeted to less than $2. Analysts were writing their obituaries. Intel, feeling the lack of competition, grew complacent. They began releasing incremental 4-core updates year after year, charging premium prices for what was essentially the same technology. They thought the war was over. They were wrong.
In 2014, a brilliant engineer named Dr. Lisa Su took the helm of AMD. She didn't just want to survive, she wanted to innovate. She made a high-stakes bet on a project called Zen. The goal was simple but seemingly impossible: a 40% increase in instructions per clock cycle. This was a leap that usually took a decade, and she wanted it in 3 years. To do this, AMD had to think differently. While Intel focused on making one single, massive piece of silicon, AMD moved toward chiplets. Think of it like building with Legos. Instead of one giant, expensive chip, they would connect smaller, high-yield pieces together. This allowed them to scale the number of cores to heights Intel couldn't match without the chips overheating or becoming too expensive to build. It was a radical shift in philosophy. The team worked in the shadows, knowing that if Zen failed, the company would likely cease to exist. The pressure was immense, but the results would soon shock the entire world.
Year 2017. The launch of Ryzen. For the first time in over 10 years, the tech community held its breath. When the benchmarks hit, the silence at Intel headquarters must have been deafening. AMD wasn't just competitive, they were offering double the cores of Intel for the same price. The Ryzen 7 1800X offered 8 cores at a time when Intel's flagship consumer chip only had 4. Suddenly, streamers, video editors, and gamers flocked to the red team. AMD had found Intel's Achilles heel: complacency. Because Intel had spent years refining a 4-core standard, they weren't prepared for a multi-core revolution. Intel's initial response was panicked. They rushed out new chips that ran too hot and required new motherboards, frustrating their loyal customer base. The narrative had shifted overnight. AMD was no longer the budget brand, they were the performance brand. The momentum was shifting, and the red tide was starting to rise across the globe.
While AMD was soaring, Intel was trapped in a manufacturing nightmare. For decades, Intel's greatest strength was its factories, or fabs, but as they tried to move to the 10-nanometer node, they hit a wall. Making transistors that small is like trying to draw a map of a city on the head of a needle.
yields were terrible, meaning most of the chips coming off the line were broken. Intel was stuck on 14-nanometer technology for years, forced to add more and more plus signs to their marketing materials to hide the lack of progress. Meanwhile, AMD made a strategic masterstroke. They stopped making their own chips. They outsourced manufacturing to TSMC in Taiwan. This allowed AMD to use the world's most advanced 7-nanometer process while Intel was still struggling to fix their own factories. It was a reversal of roles. The giant was bogged down by its own infrastructure, while the smaller rival was leaner, faster, and using better tools. The gap was closing, and in some areas, AMD was already pulling ahead.
The real money in the CPU world isn't in home computers, it's in the massive data centers that power the internet. This was Intel's fortress, where they held over 99% market share. But with the launch of EPYC, AMD's server line, they began to dismantle that fortress brick by brick. Cloud giants like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft noticed something. AMD chips were more power efficient and offered more bang for the buck in the server rack. In a data center, power efficiency is everything because electricity costs millions. Intel found itself in a price war it couldn't win. As AMD's market share in servers climbed from 0% toward 20% and then 30%, Intel's profit margins began to bleed. This wasn't just a loss of prestige, it was a loss of the capital Intel needed to fix its manufacturing problems. The underdog was now taking the king's crown jewels. Every quarter, the financial reports told the same story. AMD was gaining, and Intel was struggling to find its footing in a world that had moved past them. Intel knew they needed a change. In 2021, they brought back Pat Gelsinger, a legendary engineer who had been mentored by the company's founders. His mission was clear: restore Intel to its geek roots. He launched the IDM 2.0 strategy, an ambitious plan to not only fix their own manufacturing, but to start making chips for other companies too. Intel began investing hundreds of billions of dollars into new factories in Ohio and Germany. They also introduced a radical new chip design with performance and efficiency cores, similar to how smartphone chips work. This helped them regain some ground in the gaming market, but the road back is long and incredibly expensive. AMD is no longer a weak target. They are a powerhouse with a massive R&D budget and a clear vision. The war has entered a new phase, where both sides are pushing the limits of physics. It's no longer a one-sided slaughter. It's a high-speed chase where the slightest mistake could lead to total disaster. So, what is the lesson of the CPU wars? It's that in the world of technology, no empire is too large to fail, and no underdog is too small to change the world. AMD's comeback wasn't just about luck. It was about engineering excellence and the courage to take a different path when everyone else was following the leader. For us, the consumers, this war is the best thing that could have happened. Because of this rivalry, we have more powerful laptops, faster servers, and more affordable high-end computers than ever before. We moved from 4 cores being a luxury to 16 cores being standard in just a few short years. The struggle between Intel and AMD reminds us that competition is the true engine of progress. As we look toward the future of artificial intelligence and quantum computing, the lessons of this decade will remain. Stay hungry, stay agile, and never, ever assume the battle is won, because the next revolution is always just one chip away. I hope this deep dive gave you a new perspective on the strategies and the relentless mindset behind these global icons. If you enjoy deconstructing business empires and tech legends in this tech archive style, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. That way, you will never miss a new blueprint of history. For those of you ready to explore more boardroom coups and technological breakthroughs, I have handpicked 2 videos for you right here on the screen. Click one to keep watching. I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.